the signature that ended an era. It took less than 5 seconds. A pen touched paper. Ink dried. Hands were shaken. And in that quiet, unremarkable moment, an era that had taken decades to build came to an end. Without collapse, without conflict, without anyone realizing what had just been lost. History often marks endings with noise, resignations, scandals, power struggles. But the most permanent endings rarely announce themselves. They arrive disguised as routine. And today, in a world governed by contracts and compliance, this kind of ending is more common than ever. The billionaire at the center of the story had reached a peak few ever touch. The empire was stable, profitable, admired for its discipline and maturity. The chaos of early growth had been replaced by structure, predictability, and trust from institutions that once kept their distance. From the outside, it looked like success perfected. The reveal began with pressure, subtle, professional, persistent. Regulators wanted assurance. Partners wanted guarantees. Investors wanted insulation from risk. Nothing unreasonable, nothing aggressive. Just expectations that come when an empire grows large enough to matter to systems bigger than itself. The billionaire listened carefully, aware that refusal would invite scrutiny, delay, and doubt. So a proposal was drafted. It wasn't framed as surrender. It was framed as evolution. Stronger oversight, clearer boundaries, formal commitments designed to protect the company's future regardless of who sat at the top. Advisors praised its elegance. Lawyers called it standard. Analysts said it would unlock long-term confidence. The billionaire read every page, and then they signed. At first, nothing changed. The company operated as before. Leadership remained visible. Decisions continued to flow. The signature felt like insurance. Something filed away, unlikely to be tested. But signatures don't announce their power immediately. They wait. The reveal sharpened when a decision the billionaire expected to finalize was redirected. Not denied, not challenged, simply rerouted through newly established authority. The explanation was polite, procedural, unquestionable. It's required under the new agreement. The billionaire paused, surprised by the unfamiliar phrase, new agreement. In that moment, something ancient shifted. The signature hadn't changed what the billionaire could do. It had changed what they were allowed to do. And once permission replaces instinct, an era doesn't end loudly. It ends quietly, line by line, clause by clause, until the future belongs to the document, not the person who built it. The first boundary had already been crossed, and the billionaire was only beginning to feel where the era truly ended. The boundaries revealed themselves gradually, disguised as compliance. Each decision now carried a shadow, not of risk, but of permission. Actions once guided by judgment were now checked against language, clauses, and interpretations. The billionaire noticed a change not in outcomes at first, but in rhythm. Everything moved slower, more carefully, more quietly. The reveal deepened when advisors began speaking differently. Where they once asked what should be done, they now asked what was allowed. Conversations shifted from strategy to interpretation, from possibility to limitation. The document the billionaire had signed became the silent authority in the room, shaping direction without ever raising its voice. The conflict sharpened during a routine expansion review. The data supported the move. The opportunity was clean. The timing felt right. The billionaire approved it instinctively, then watched as the approval stalled. Legal teams flagged provisions. Compliance requested clarification. Partners asked for assurances. None of them said no. They didn't have to. The agreement spoke for them. What once would have taken days now stretched into weeks. By the time clearance arrived, the opportunity had cooled. The billionaire felt a familiar frustration, but something deeper lingered beneath it: recognition. This was not resistance. It was governance doing exactly what it was designed to do. The emotional weight surfaced privately. Reviewing the signed pages again, the billionaire saw what had been invisible before. Authority had not been removed. It had been conditional. Power had not been lost. It had been postponed indefinitely, depending on interpretation. The signature had traded flexibility for certainty. The conflict reached a sharper edge when a senior executive, speaking with genuine respect, explained a refusal using the document's language. "It's not about trust," they said. "It's about structure." The phrase landed heavily. Structure had become the final word, outranking experience, intuition, and legacy. The billionaire realized something unsettling. The empire no longer needed them to decide. It needed them to comply. And compliance, once accepted, rewires leadership from within. You begin to think in boundaries. You begin to anticipate constraints. You stop imagining beyond what the document allows. The era hadn't ended with the signature. It was ending now. Each time the billionaire hesitated, recalibrated, or deferred instinct to interpretation, the conflict was no longer abstract. It was lived. And the next realization would be harder still. Once authority is written down, it no longer belongs to the person who once embodied it. It belongs to whoever enforces the words. The conflict crystallized when the document began deciding faster than the billionaire could think. Situations arose that demanded immediate judgment, moments shaped by nuance, timing, and experience rather than precedent. Yet each time, the response returned to the same source: the agreement, the clauses, the interpretations layered on top of interpretation. The billionaire felt it during a sudden external shock. A regulatory shift overseas created a narrow window to reposition assets before competitors reacted. Instinct was clear: act now, adjust quietly, move before the window closed. This was the kind of moment the billionaire had navigated dozens of times before. But this time, instinct stalled at the gate. Legal review was required. Partner notification was mandatory. Oversight approval was necessary. The billionaire pushed, arguing timing. The answer was calm and final. The agreement did not allow unilateral action under these conditions. By the time approvals arrived, the window was gone. No one had failed. No one had disobeyed. No one had been wrong. And yet, something irreparable had happened. The emotional impact struck deeper than frustration. The billionaire realized they were no longer trusted to respond to reality as it unfolded. The agreement assumed the future could be managed in advance. That uncertainty could be governed away. That authority could be reduced to language. Inside meetings, the billionaire began noticing themselves speaking less. Not because they had nothing to say, but because saying it changed nothing. Suggestions were weighed against text, not wisdom. Decisions were justified by paragraphs, not outcomes. The document had become the leader everyone answered to. The breaking moment came during a crisis simulation meant to test preparedness. Scenarios were presented, responses outlined. When asked who would make the final call under pressure, the room fell silent. Eyes drifted to the agreement. Someone finally said what everyone felt: "We need to see what the document permits." The billionaire understood the cost instantly. In removing the burden of judgment, the agreement had removed the capacity for courage. No one could act beyond the text. No one could be blamed or credited for decisive leadership. The system was safe and completely exposed. Because when reality breaks beyond the words, only people can respond. The billionaire felt a cold truth settle in. An era had ended not because power was taken, but because responsibility had been written away. And once that happens, no amount of legacy can bring it back. The climax arrived when the billionaire accepted what the signature had truly done. Not weakened them, not betrayed them, but replaced them. Authority had not been stolen by rivals or eroded by failure. It had been transferred cleanly, legally, permanently, from a human being to a document designed to survive without one. In a final closed session with senior leadership, the billionaire spoke with rare clarity. They acknowledged the stability the agreement had created, the confidence it gave regulators, the trust it earned partners. Then they named the cost no one wanted to confront. When responsibility is written down, courage disappears. When judgment is pre-approved, leadership becomes theoretical. And when no one is allowed to decide, everyone waits. The room was silent. The billionaire did not call for rebellion. They did not tear up the agreement or ignite a public fight. They understood something deeper. The era did not end because of the signature itself. It ended because the world had chosen systems over stewards, predictability over presence, text over trust, So the billionaire made their final choice. They stepped out of the role the document had hollowed, not in defeat, in recognition. Publicly, it was framed as transition. Privately, it was closure. The empire would continue, governed, compliant, stable. But the age of instinct-led leadership within it was over. The resolution unfolded quietly. A new executive structure emerged, perfectly aligned with the agreement. Decisions became consistent. Risk narrowed. The company moved forward without surprise. Investors were reassured. Regulators relaxed. The machine worked. And the billionaire? They walked away from the center they once embodied, carrying a lesson few ever learned firsthand. Power does not always end with loss. Sometimes it ends with permission, because the moment leadership must ask to act, it is no longer leadership. It is management of boundaries written by the past. The signature did not destroy the empire. It preserved it, but it also closed a chapter that would never reopen. An era does not end when a leader falls. It ends when a document no longer needs them to stand. Subscribe to join the journey. The